Hi everyone, thanks for having me. My name's Kiro. I'm a counselor, a psychotherapist. I understand this meeting is usually Arabic speaking. العربي بتاعي is not good at all, but I'll do my best. If you have any questions إذا بقول حاجة بالإنجليزي ومش فاهمينها or you need a specific word or what I'm talking about, please ask and I'm sure someone can translate. I'm sure هنضحكوا a bit as well with my Arabic, so معلش استحملوني. So like I said, my name's Kiro, I'm a counselor, and we've been asked النهارده نتكلم on the topic of purity, طهارة. And I'll be talking من ناحية psychology and socially والعيلة and the impact that it has بتأثر علينا ازاي, impurity and things like that. وابونا هيتكلم من ناحية spirituality الروحانية. كنت عايز ابتدي with this topic of purity. من نظري أنا, I'm a counselor. I do a lot of marriage counseling, for the community, with the Coptic community. And للأسف there's a lot of problems in a lot of the marriages that we have in the community with the topic of pornography. I thought هنتكلم على purity or impurity and sexual impurity within the marriage. Pornography, مشكلة كبيرة, is a very, very big problem. I'll be talking about this issue, and I'll make a few points. The problem with pornography in our marriages, for relationships, why pornography is such a big problem, the impact it has on our marriages, فبتأثر علينا ازاي, and then I'll talk about ways that we can work on the problem or solve the problem individually for us. I've got some statistics just نوريكم how big of a problem pornography is. So there's a lot of studies done on pornography, and just a few statistics. For one study that was done, it says pornography online has more views, more what they call traffic, online traffic, than Netflix and Amazon and Twitter combined. For everyone that watches Twitter, everyone that's on Amazon, everyone that watches Netflix, each month more people use pornography online than worldwide. كل شهر, how many people use Netflix, Amazon and Twitter? 34% of internet users, فكلنا بنستعمل الانترنت, 34% of internet users, they access pornography because the pornography came to them. هم ما دوروش عليها online and searching and all that, هي بتجيلهم. It comes to them through pop-ups, through ads, through links, whatever. For 34% of people that come across pornography, مش عشان هم عملوا search وعايزين يتفرجوا and they access these sites, هي بتجيلهم. And there's a few other statistics. I can send some of this stuff around if anyone interested to learn about. There was one other very important study from America, and this was for 2010, in 2010. For دلوقتي, I'm sure it's a lot worse. They did a study, and then they projected this study across all of America. Based on the study اللي هم عملوها, they then used that study to estimate across all of the United States. And the outcome of this study found that 47% of families from America had a pornography problem في البيت عندهم. 47%, nearly نص, nearly half, nearly 50% of families in America have pornography as a problem في البيت عندهم. Either في الجواز, within the marriage, or probably their children, their adolescents, but within the family, nearly half of American families have a problem with pornography. I'll talk about the biggest problems with pornography. The first problem is إن الواحد اللي بيتفرج على this stuff becomes what they call desensitized. فاللي بيتفرج عليه, اللي بيشوفه, اللي بيتفرج عليه ما بيأثرش عليه anymore. Becomes normal. They become desensitized. It doesn't affect them like it used to. And the problem is for them to you receive pleasure ويحبوا يتفرجوا أكتر and to have the joy that comes from watching. They need to watch more and more and more and more. It's exactly the same as drugs. مخدرات. أي واحد بياخد مخدرات في الأول ياخد شوية مخدرات and the effect is there. بعد شوية المخدرات دي ما بتأثرش عليهم the same. لازم ياخدوا أكتر وأكتر وأكتر. يبتدوا بحاجات قليلة و low level marijuana, alcohol, whatever. And then عشان you have the effect of the drug, they take more and they use different drugs, cocaine or heroin, كذا كذا كذا. Exact same as pornography. The person needs more and more and more عشان يحس إن هو satisfied and happy. The second problem with pornography, and let's talk about pornography, they fantasize فبيفكروا and they want to do what they're seeing. In their relationships with their husband, with their wife, بيشوفوا pornography and all the sexual stuff in pornography, and then عايزين يعملوا الحاجات دي في حياتهم with their partner, with their husband, with their wife, whatever. And the problem is إن الحاجات this stuff it's not real, مش حقيقي. It's videos, movies. فبيشوفوا حاجات and in their mind believing in that this is real. This is how people do these things. This level of sexuality is real. And they want to do this وبيتعلموا من اللي بيشوفوهم and عايزين يعملوا الحاجات دي in their marriage. And the problem is it's not real. It's like if you watch a movie, ونتفرج على فيلم وناس shooting and jumping وبيعملوا حركات فيلم. And imagine واحد يتفرج على الفيلم كده and عايز يعمل الحاجات دي in real life. Impossible. It's the exact same with pornography. It causes a lot of problems. And usually, not all the time, but معظم الوقت for the males. This problem usually more a problem للmales, للرجالة, than الستات. Not all the time, but معظم الوقت. It becomes a real problem. ثالث حاجة, when people are addicted to pornography, they're not satisfied in their relationships. عشان بيتفرجوا على الحاجات دي and spending a lot of time on this stuff, then real life with their husband, with their wife, what's happening in that relationship, مش بيشبعوا. They're not satisfied. They're not happy. They want more. عايزين اللي بيشوفوه. For the relationship they do have with their spouse, they're not satisfied, which is a big problem. Imagine واحد اثنين متجوزين and they're not satisfied from each other, or one person not satisfied in the sexual part of their relationship. It's a very big problem in marriages. The fourth problem is الbehavior بتاع الواحد اللي بيتفرج على الحاجات دي. usually ما بيقولش ان انا بتفرج على الحاجات دي وانا this is a problem that I have. No. فيبتدي يكذب او يخبي او behave in a way that's not good, and that causes other problems in the marriage and in the family. If someone starts to behave where they're hiding things, they're lying, they're deleting things, بيخبوا, it becomes a big problem within the marriage. The fifth problem, and again معظم الوقت for males, is the way they see women becomes a very big problem. فطول ما يتفرجوا على الحاجات دي and all this pornography, the way they view their wives, the way they look at other women at work, wherever, becomes a big problem. Because in their eyes, في النظر بتاعهم, women become an object, just a sexual thing, not their wife, or not their colleague for sure, or not their whoever. And it starts to change the view that these people have in regards to their wives or to other females, which then is obviously a very big problem. The reason for this stuff, ليه الواحد becomes addicted or watches some of this stuff. And again, there's a few reasons. One, loneliness. And واحد lonely. He's not, or she's not, but for the purpose of this talk, I'm going to talk as if it's the male, just for this talk. He's not, he's not happy in his marriage. He feels lonely. Maybe his relationship with his wife not the best, or sexually not where he wants it to be. He's very lonely, and that's a reason why he watch this stuff. Anger and frustration, and يطلع stress relief, يطلع anger and frustration that he's experiencing. This is a reason why it gives him relief, it gives him pleasure, makes him feel good, whatever. مش عارف بالعربي بس narcissism. What's narcissism? نعم؟
نرجسية.
نرجسية. Narcissism. So إن الواحد he feels يعني everything's about him. I want this. I want it now. مراتي doesn't care, or she's not available, or she's tired, or it's been weeks until we've been together. وأنا حقي وأنا it's not my problem. And this is the reason for مخه he convinced himself and لا حقه, he's entitled to have this pleasure for whatever reason عشان مراته not giving it to him or whatever. So it's very selfish, a selfish behavior. The other problem is how easy it is to find. Just one click on the internet, you can have anything you want. For the accessibility, how easy it is to access this stuff, it's very easy. سهل إن إحنا نلاقي الحاجات دي, and it's very very available to us. خامس حاجة boredom. واحد زهقان. So when you're bored, مفيش حاجة تعملها, مفيش حد في البيت, أو دلوقتي عشان كلنا بنشتغل من البيت, so working from home, we have a lot of time, we're very bored. For not having something to do, unfortunately, and I think خطية in general, when we're bored, it's a big risk and نحن نخطي and we do things that's not right. So these are some reasons why we engage in this behavior. The impact that this stuff has on us, and there's a few different things that pornography or an addiction to pornography does to a human being. The first one, and I'll talk about this briefly, I won't go into too much detail, but the first one is يعني الطريقة هي بتأثر على المخ, on the brain. From a medical perspective, there's a part of the brain, اسمها the reward center, the part of the brain that we get rewarded, we feel good, we feel pleasure, we feel happiness, we feel joy. There's a hormone called dopamine. Dopamine بالعربي, dopamine. There's a hormone called dopamine. Whenever we do something good that makes us happy, that makes us feel joy, that we reward ourselves, this hormone releases in the brain. And dopamine connects a behavior with that happy feeling or that reward feeling. نعمل حاجة that makes us happy, and dopamine comes out in different ways. When we eat sugar or sweets, dopamine comes out. When we exercise, dopamine is released. Other things that we do that give us dopamine, that make us feel rewarded, pleasure. The problem with pornography, usually the brain releases شوية dopamine hormone and then it stops. يعني احنا عايزين حاجة حلوة, ناكل شوكولاتة and we feel satisfied and we're happy and يعني عملت شغلها, and that's it. The dopamine comes and stops. Same thing يعني with other things. المشكلة في pornography with drugs and addiction, and the dopamine doesn't stop. There's no limit. مش dopamine شوية and then you feel good and then it finishes. The addiction, you need more dopamine عشان تحس the same feeling that you had, joy, happiness, satisfied and انت شبعت. You need a lot more dopamine, and the dopamine ما بيقفش. You need more and more and more and more. Same with drugs, مخدرات and alcohol, exact same thing. Same with gambling, exact same thing. All these addictions. So this is the problem with pornography. وبتأثر على المخ ازاي. The other issues with pornography and ازاي بتأثر على الواحد, on the individual. And there's a lot of different ways. The first thing for us, for men, the way we see ourselves, احنا بنشوف نفسنا ازاي. احنا رجالة. ولما احنا نتفرج على الحاجات دي, we believe in this is how we're supposed to be in our marriage, with our wives. All these actions, all of this pornography sexually, we think and that this is the norm. This is how a male is supposed to be. نحن مفروض نبقى كده. فبتأثر علينا in the way we see ourselves, how we are with our wives. The other problem is for pornography, there's يعني في any marriage there's, and maybe I need a translation, there's sexual intimacy and emotional intimacy. فالintimacy, العلاقة بيني وبين مراتي, there's sexual and there's emotional and feelings. And a lot of the time, and in a marriage, you need the emotional connection to have the sexual connection. With pornography, ما فيش emotional connection. Zero. Nothing. It's just sexual. فلما الواحد يقعد يتفرج على الحاجات دي, it takes away the emotional side completely. فلما يجي مراته أو تيجي لجوزها, there's no emotion, it's just about the action. And in a marriage, that's a very big problem. And for females, it's a very big problem. If there's no emotional intimacy and it's just sexual intimacy, it's a very, very big problem in our marriages. Other impacts, the desire. فالواحد لما يتفرج على الحاجات دي يعني الديزاير بتاعته بتقل. He doesn't want what his wife has. He doesn't want how his wife looks. He doesn't want what his wife's offering. It's boring. It's not exciting. He's not interested. عشان كله في مخه, and what he's exposed to is all this other rubbish that he's seen online. فالديزاير بتاعته for مراته becomes less and less and less. He's not interested. Another problem for pornography is, again, medically, يعني sexually performing in a male. There's medical issues, studies proven, حاجات like erectile dysfunction and premature ejaculation, يعني all these medical problems in regards to sexuality. And بتأثر على الواحد, sexually for the male when they're addicted to pornography and all of this stuff. Another big problem is a lot of the time for pornography, there's a lot of violence and aggression and anger. For a lot of this pornography, مش عارف أقول بالعربي, like aggression and anger and violence.
عنف وغضب.
عنف وغرب. غرب. عنف وغرب. Yeah? Awesome. فيها ضاد كده غضب. So, and this is the problem. يعني we watch this stuff and addicted. ونقعد نتفرج. It impacts us, and احنا we behave this way. We want to do these things. Again, it's exciting. The dopamine in the brain releases this stuff, and احنا في النظر بتاعنا is this is what sex is with our wives, and it's aggressive, and it's negative, and it's vulgar. بس في مخنا, this is what we're exposed to, and this is what we want. The other impact is on the partner. If the husband is watching pornography and has an addiction or this stuff, the impact on the partner, the wives usually, it's a very, very big problem. And we all know, I'm sure it's no secret, a lot of wives, they see this as an affair, as cheating, as breaking the vows of marriage. What's adultery? Yeah, so adultery. And it is, and I think it is. People can say yes or no, but I think it is adultery. If is a واحد عينيه and his desire is for someone other than his wife, that's adultery. And everything that comes with that, all the feelings for the wife, and they feel cheated on, they feel unloved, they feel unwanted, they feel Nahoma they can't compete with these other women that the husband's watching, and the way they look, and the way they're presenting themselves, and their husband's not interested in them. It's very, very bad for the wife. The other impact, and the third impact, is on the relationship. So there's one impact on me individually if I have this addiction, but asar alayya zay. The second impact is on the partner, and the third impact is on the relationship. The biggest problem with this, and it breaks trust. Any of our relationships, any of our marriages are based on trust. And if pornography is a problem, then it means we're lying. Like we said before, it means we're deceiving. It means we're hiding. It means بنكذب, بنخبي. And it's a big problem. That then leads to other issues in the marriage. عشان إذا ما فيش trust, we've got a problem, a big problem. Like we said before, it takes the emotional intimacy out of the relationship. So there's no emotional connection anymore. And again, that's a very big problem in our marriages. And it's a very big problem because how men and women are different. For the woman, the emotional side, if that's taken out of the relationship, it's a very big problem. In order to how we deal with this stuff, we've talked about all the impacts and the problems and all the mashakil that come with pornography, how to deal with it and how to process it. There's a few steps, a few things that we need to do, and the individual first needs to do. The first thing we need to do is we're aware and we accept these problems with pornography. A lot of the time احنا بنقول لنفسنا it's not that bad أو مش بتفرج كل يوم, I'm not addicted, it's just ساعات كده, you know, when أنا بعترف and it's no problem and مش بتأثر really, it doesn't. We need to accept this reality. And حتى even if we don't realize it, but it does أثر and it does become a problem, and if it's not controlled, it's an addiction like any other addiction. That's the first point. We have to acknowledge and be honest and be real with this problem. The second thing we need to do is to look at our own values and our own morals and our ethics and our religion and our faith, to be very clear on what's okay and what's not okay, what's right and what's wrong, what's khatiyah and what's not khatiyah. And again, shaitan and our weakness, we convince ourselves maybe it's not that bad, or you know, I didn't look for, oh, I didn't, I didn't, do anything bad, I just saw it or whatever. Yani we convince ourselves, we water down the sin. So we need to go back to what we believe in and what we know to be true and correct, and differentiate between what's right and what's wrong. The third thing we need to do is be honest with ourselves and face our fear of what life will be like without this addiction. So for now, it feels good, it's pleasurable, my wife's not available, for I'm having my needs met from pornography. Because we then need to be honest with ourselves and picture and be ready to face a life without this. And it means maybe fixing some problems in our marriage. If we're not happy in our marriage, if we're not مستريحين أو مش شبعانين, or we're not happy, then these are problems that we need to fix. The answer is not to go watch pornography. The answer is to fix maybe some of the problems and have some discussions with our partner about the problems that we have in our marriage to find a solution. And once we do all that, then we need to start taking action to stop this addiction. And there's a few things. The first thing, obviously, we have to pray. This is an addiction, this is a weakness, and a very big one, especially for males. We need to pray, and we need Rabbina to help us with these addictions, like any other addiction. We're weak human beings, we can't do this stuff on our own. It's very, very hard, but we need to pray. We need support. From my opinion, as a counselor, supporting people with addictions and doing marriage counseling, these addictions are hard to do on your own. صعب جدا. And someone to overcome an addiction on their own. We have to be honest and not to be shy or embarrassed, نتكسف or anything like that, to get help. Whether it's from Abuna, whether it's from a counselor, whether it's from our partner, whether the person that is helping us is our husband or wife, usually we need help to overcome this problem. The third thing and more practical things we do is we need to minimize نقلل the risk of this stuff happening. A lot of the time this stuff happens وإحنا لوحدنا, by ourselves, في الأوضة بالليل, ما فيش حد في البيت, we're in a room by ourselves and we have our laptop or we have our phone or whatever. We know ourselves when is the time that's very, very high risk إن الحاجات دي تحصل. And we have to minimize, we have to be honest, and we have to minimize that risk, the high risk periods of when this stuff happens. Some things that are effective for people, strategies, psychological strategies. For things like, and I know stuff successful with some people I work with, some clients I work with, asking themselves questions. I've got one guy who struggles with this, and one thing that's very, very helpful for him is he asks himself every time, إذا أنا لقيت ابني بيتفرج على الحاجات دي, would I be happy? Is this something I'm okay for my son? And his son is 10, 11, coming to the age where this will be a risk. Is my son okay with this? Or asking yourself, would my wife be okay with this? إذا مراتي عرفت أنا بتفرج على الحاجات دي, will she be okay? Is this acceptable? Anything قدام أبونا إن أنا أروح أعترف عندي تاني, and embarrassment or مكسوف, using all these things to try and help us to stop these behaviors or to stop these addictions. So psychological strategies to help us to overcome this. I said to another client, a good strategy for him and بيقول لنفسه it's على التليفون on his phone بيقرا الإنجيل. He's got Coptic reader or upper room media وبيسمع وعظز and يقرا الإنجيل and all that on the phone. وبيقول لنفسه نفس التليفون اللي أنا بستعمل إن أنا أقرا الإنجيل بتفرج على الحاجات دي. How استعمل التليفون أفتح الإنجيل واستعمل نفس التليفون وأتفرج على الحاجات دي. It's ridiculous. And this is powerful for him. He asks himself this, or he reminds himself of this, and thank God that stops him from doing this stuff. For strategies that we can come up with to help us. And the last thing is, and it's very effective, and sometimes we don't think of it, other ways to have that dopamine. Exercise is a very, very big one. If a male, especially for males, sexual frustration, to release some of that dopamine, to release some of that energy, exercise is very, very effective. It can be very, very effective. Healthy eating and exercise, sleep, all of this stuff for the body can be effective. So these are just some things. That's my take from a psychological, social perspective. I think Abuna will say some things from a spiritual, طريق روحانية, and I'll give it to Abuna now.
Thank you. Kiro's Arabic is nosonos, my Arabic is 0. So I'm sorry in advance. I'll only talk for 10 minutes because Kiro covered most of it. Just looking, they asked me to talk about spiritual purity. And if we look at what purity means, it means that I'm clean. It means that if you have a cup of water, it means that there's no dirt in it. There's no sediment, we call it. And for me, purity can be sexual, of course, but it can be any other thing as well. Anything that I put in that cup of water that makes it unclean, that makes it dirty, makes me impure. If I'm very angry, if I'm very greedy, if I'm very lustful, all of these things mean that I'm not pure. And if I'm not pure, then God can't be in here. Impossible. Because God needs to be somewhere that is pure, and if I'm not pure, then God can't be in me. So, yes, I can be sexually very pure. Many of us can look at other people, say they're disgusting, look at all the bad things that they look at. But to me, I'm judging. And my impurity could be much worse than theirs. So we never judge and say somebody is worse. I am the worst one. And I always look at myself, the worst one. So, what is a house of purity? If we want houses of purity for us and our families, what is a house of purity? It is where God comes first. It is when nothing else is there. Anger, hatred, ma'bad. We're angry, we swear at each other. Like Kiro said, I'm looking elsewhere. My eyes are elsewhere. I'm greedy, I'm selfish. I don't care about my husband or my partner's needs, physically or otherwise. All of these things is where I put something else before God, and this is a house of impurity. It's a defiled house, because any house that God is not the focus, but other things are the focus, is a defiled house. Not every sin is the same. Many times I've heard people say, a sin is a sin. Yani, if I tell a little white lie, my wife says, do I look fat? And I say, no, you look beautiful. Not that my wife is fat, but you know what I mean, she's beautiful. But if I say that and I say, no, you don't look fat at all, but yes, she does. This is a little white lie. Of course, that's not the same as I go and I, steal something, or I hurt someone, or I judge, or I gossip. Of course, not every sin is the same. And it's the same with this. If I am looking at these things, and I am addicted, or I'm struggling with this, but I feel very strongly that this is wrong, and I feel that I'm trying my best, and I struggle, sometimes I fall, and I come and I repent and I confess immediately. If I am doing this, this is not the same sin as if I'm doing it, it's okay, my wife, she doesn't care about me, I'm bored, what difference does it make? No one knows, and I don't tell anyone, and I do it in secret and in shame. The same action, but it's different in the eyes of God. Of course, it's very different in the eyes of God. So not every sin is the same. So if I'm doing this and I'm not trying to get help and I'm not trying to fix myself, then my house is corrupt. Yes? So this particular form of corruption, this sexual sin, is bad. Why? Because when I marry someone, the reason why we don't have sex before marriage, does everyone understand me? Is everyone understanding me? Or am I talking too fast? Everyone understands? Yes? I'm sorry, I talk very fast. When I marry someone on the altar, I'm not allowed to sleep with that person before marriage. Why? Because until I make a commitment on the altar that this person, I will live for this person. I will die for this person. I will sacrifice my happiness for this person till the day I die. Until I make that promise, it's not mine to take. Until I make that promise to this person, I cannot take their body as mine until I've paid the price. A price that Christ paid for us. That I will live for that person and die for that person. Does everyone understand that? So when we look at pornography, or when we even watching TV and something comes up and I keep my eyes on there, or when somebody walks past me in the street and I don't turn away my eyes, I'm stealing. I'm taking something that does not belong to me. I have done nothing for it. I haven't paid the price. All I did was press a button and it comes up, and this person is exposed, and I take from them and I give nothing back. So it's stealing. And when I look at somebody in the street, a girl walks past, doesn't matter what she's wearing, that's on her, between her and God. Between me and God is what I do. Or when somebody walks past and I keep my eyes looking and I stare, I am taking from her something that doesn't belong to me. It's not on offer for me. Maybe even if they're behaving inappropriately, it is not on offer for me because I've paid nothing for it. I've not worked for it. I've not sacrificed for it. Does that make sense? So sexuality has to be a give and take. On the altar before God, I will live for this person. And then their body is mine, my body is theirs. And then we love each other and we respect the sexual needs of each other. And then we can have a happy marriage. Obviously, there's complicating issues that come up that sometimes we need counseling and this and that, but this is the general Christian principle of it. So when I look at pornography, the gift that God has given, especially in a marriage, the gift that God has given me, that I've paid the price for, I chuck it. It's boring. It's rubbish. I don't need this anymore. I've got something better that comes cheap and easy. It doesn't give me long-term happiness, but quick happiness. But when that happens, even from a spiritual perspective, now my relationship with my wife, it's not the same. Because if we don't have a good, healthy sexuality in our marriage, we need to be intimate regularly. If I don't have a good, healthy, how do I fix problems? We're fighting, and then we go to bed. There's no closeness. I don't have a way of fixing. Because like Kira said, if you're angry with someone, you can never be intimate. So when you're intimate, it means that we're not angry anymore. We love each other. And it's like the Trinity is one, and God makes us one flesh. And so physically, we live that. And you feel beautiful. When you have a good sexuality, the closeness that you have with your wife and your husband is a gift from God. But when we introduce a third party in that, we corrupt that process. Okay. So why should we be spiritually pure? You may think, oh, sorry.
That one is a bit higher.
Oh, okay, yep, sorry. Oh, is that better? Okay. You may think that my children don't know, but they know. And they will know. You may think you can keep it hidden, but you can never keep these things hidden. Impurity will be seen by all. And even if my children don't say, oh yes, they're looking at pornography, my children will know something is not right. The purity, it's a feeling that exists in a house over many years. When your children wake up or live and they see you praying and they see mum and dad loving each other, and they see us affectionate, and when they see the Bible open in our house, when the things we talk about are spiritual things, this transforms them. But when one partner is gone, mum and dad are never close, they're distracted. As they get older, they start to notice things. All of a sudden, they know this house is not a house of purity. And that will transform them in the other way. So it doesn't just affect you, it affects your family. Not just pornography, it's a bad one, but not just pornography. Anger, greed, jealousy, all of these things, fighting. It introduces impurity in the house, and that changes the children, slowly but surely. Many times you see kids, you say, why is this kid so messed up? Why is he so troubled? The family's not too bad. But then you spend a little bit of time with the family and you say, it's been years exposed to all of these little things. Years, it's very damaging. So, if I want to raise a spiritual house, I have to have a spiritual heart within me in the first place. And if my heart is not spiritual, I will never raise a spiritual house. I won't cover much because Kiro covered a lot of it. What if I'm suffering with this? Like Kiro said, no excuse. This is a sin, end of story. But my wife this, my husband this, it doesn't matter. They answer to God for their problems, you answer to God for yours. God will never say, oh yeah, because your wife or your husband did this, type mesh, it's all right. He will never say that. You have to own your mistakes regardless of what anyone else has done. If you do that, that's the first step to healing. And I think that it's very important to put protective measures in place. You put programs on your computer for the family, not just for my kids, but yes, for my kids, but for the whole family. We put protective measures that we only use the computer in certain places. If it's a really bad struggle, if it's a really bad addiction and I can't, and your wife is reasonable and not going to freak out, or if she finds out, then involve her. And maybe if we see, one of the questions there is, what should I do if my husband is looking at pornography? Don't freak out. Don't say, he's cheating on me. It depends. There's pornography and there's pornography. If he's struggling and he says, look, I'm sorry, I'm struggling with this. It's something I've struggled with since I was young and I'm working on it and my confession father knows and I'm working on it, then help him. Help him in this process. Don't make the situation worse. Help him. He's a good person. Many people have this addiction from childhood. And it's something that's very hard to break. And often the people that do the best are the ones that have the support of their wives, who are there to help them through this process. Every case is different, and get spiritual advice and spiritual guidance, but this can be a very helpful tool because then my wife is involved. And when my wife knows, then the opportunities are much less. Or my partner, whatever. Like Kira said, it's mostly a male problem, but it's a population problem. And last of all, you must be confessing and repenting regularly. You have to be. If you are looking at these things, but there is no confession and there is no repentance, then it's hidden and I'm not fixing it. And it's shameful and I'm keeping it shamed and then I'm not getting any of this. And like Kiro said, we have to increase our prayer life so that the love of God eventually overcomes the love that we have for these things. Were there any questions? Any other questions on the thing? I just saw the one. Sorry if no one understood that, but if no one understood, at least I learned something. How we enjoy domestic purity together, not as a burden or commandment. Is this, I think that means, I don't know, say maybe that means how to enjoy nice, healthy sexuality together. Look, it takes effort, you know, like, especially when we have kids, and my kids are everything kids. And my husband, he stands there, and all my wife cares about other kids. And he feels like sometimes he's an outsider in his own home because maybe he's working, he comes home, kids love mum, cooks for the kids, husband's eating toast because he's gone, because they often get forgotten. Now, I don't mean to make it out like we need to serve our husbands. We live in a very modern society, and things are different. But we have to put in effort. So for the husband to have this, if you want to have a good sexuality, you have to work for it. For example, we have to go and spend time together one-on-one, like a couple. We get a babysitter, we leave it with Teto or Geddo, and we go and we have a nice dinner. We go for a weekend. If you do that, and you spend time together talking, connected, of course there will be intimacy that comes from that. And be smart. If I know there are things that I can do that will make my wife happy, that makes it easier, then we do those things. Massage, if I cup of tea, I serve, I do things, clean the house. All of these things help to build the intimacy. And on the other side, we have to be a little bit understanding that everyone has different sexual needs, and we have to find a compromise. Not, yes, too much, or too little. We have to find a compromise that makes everyone happy. And if we're doing it in ways where we're connected and we're spending time together and we are still remembering, trying to attract my husband, trying to attract my wife, wearing nice cologne, all of these things, make it a thought process. Think about it. What are the things that lead to better intimacy? Let's do it more. Does that make sense? I think if we do those things, then we do it. And the practices that we have when we're intimate, very mutually acceptable. We don't do anything that leads to, it has to be a mutual act of giving. Keep that in mind, that we all have to come out of it feeling pure and feeling connected to each other. If one party doesn't, then we're not doing it right. So we work hard to do it together, that we both come out feeling pure, that I feel like that was very enjoyable and giving and taking, and not one party feels impure or like they didn't get something out of it. Does that make sense? And there's another question. My partner lacks sexual desire, so I use pornography to compensate the gap. What should I do? There is a big gap. This needs help. Because, like I said, there is no excuse. Pornography doesn't compensate the gap. It destroys and makes the gap bigger and bigger. So it doesn't compensate, and never can I use this as an excuse to continue to looking at pornography, ever. But that being said, it needs open communication. It needs an understanding. And sometimes one partner may have less sexual desire than the other. In these cases, it requires compromise. It requires an understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong, if anyone has a different opinion. I don't think it's reasonable to say, I don't have sexual desire, so I'm never doing it. That's a recipe for a disaster in a marriage, because the resentment that builds up from that, it's inevitable. So we have to have an understanding, what my partner needs, what I need. When we have this understanding, if there's a reason there's a lack of sexual desire because my partner is doing X, Y, Z, then I communicate. What are the things that you can do to help me? What are the things that I can do to help you? If we communicate with each other this way, then it's good. But if they don't want, and I'm getting frustrated, it's been months, blah, 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 okay, and it's almost, I'm doing it out of spite. This leads to big problems. So we have to fix the problems in the first place. Lack of intimacy can cause much bigger problems, so we fix it. Communication. If we're struggling, we see someone. We speak to someone together. There's no shame in that. A different perspective can sometimes open my eyes. But don't leave it for years. And then, by that stage, it's already a big problem and there's no fixing it. So for that question, there is no excuse. If you look at pornography, you will answer to God for that. And you can never blame anyone else for what you've done. But in that relationship needs work. If there is an addiction problem and we've already lost trust and are distant from each other, but just living for the kids and life goes on, is there hope? Why did you leave it so long? Why did you leave it so long? Kira will tell you the same thing. When you come to see him, the problems are already 100 times worse than they were 10 years ago. Why did you leave it for so long? If we get help early, at the beginning, when things are just starting to go off, it's much easier to fix. But if I wait 10 years, we haven't been intimate for years, we don't know what it's like to be alone together, to have a conversation. How do you expect, they come to Abuna and say, fix us. How do you expect Abuna to fix 10 years of like that? You have to work 10 times as hard to fix what would have been easier 10 years ago if you got it early. So have this awareness. When things are starting to go off, get help quickly. There's no shame. The problem with Masriyin is we feel like it's shameful. We don't want to tell anyone. We keep our problems hidden and we don't tell anyone. And this can work in some cases, but it's a disaster in many cases. Sometimes we just say, look, we're struggling. Every marriage struggles at different points. We're struggling. Help us. Go see Kira, although he's very busy. But go see someone. Don't leave it to get to 10 years and then it's too hard to fix. So if you're at that point, there is always hope, but it requires effort from both sides. Both parties have to do the work and try and fix that problem. Oh my goodness, the question's just... there's a few more. Should I keep going? Questions or... Zehetto? Did I say that right? Keep going. If my partner is addicted to porn and he insists to deny, what should I do? Well, if he's caught, he's caught. There's no denying. I don't know how he's denying it. Must be very clever. But if that's the case, then really this is a very hard situation. This needs spiritual guidance because he's not going to get help, and this will be a big problem in the relationship. So we need to get spiritual guidance in that situation. What if my husband doesn't make me enjoy the relationship and turns me off? Why should I do something I don't enjoy? This is a problem on both sides. Because the husband needs to, like I said, for men, we need to work harder to attract our wives. But if he's trying hard and he's doing his best, then we have to meet him halfway. And we can't just say, I don't want to do something I don't enjoy. He could say, and if I say I don't want to do something I don't enjoy, why would I ever, make my wife a cup of tea? I don't enjoy it. Why would I ever give my wife a massage? I don't want to do it. Why would I ever, sacrifice this for my husband? I don't want to do it. I don't think saying I don't want to do something, if I don't want to do it, I don't have to do it, is a helpful thing to say in a marriage. We sacrifice everything for each other. If he sacrifices for me and I sacrifice for him, then we have a beautiful relationship. And yes, maybe sometimes I don't enjoy it too much, but it's okay. I talk to my husband. We come up with ways to do it. These things take a lot of time, but if we communicate early, then we can fix the problem. Or at least make it less. If in the sexual relations one of the partners is doing this relation because she wants something from the other one to do it, is it? I don't really understand. I'm not sure. I think maybe saying wants to do something in the relationship that's not appropriate. This is what I said. This is a problem because many of us have seen things that we want to enact in the bedroom which we are not entitled to enact. Enact means like to do in the bedroom. So like I said, if we're in the bedroom and my partner comes out feeling dirty or impure because of something I want them to do, male or female, then this is a practice we shouldn't be doing. both parties need to feel pure and mutually respected and loved. And so if I'm saying, well, my wife, she's boring, the problem is with me actually. My wife is not boring, I've just seen too much. And I've experienced too much. So if that's you, you have to stop, purify yourself, and you will find that actually it's to be enjoyed in a very pure and simple way. So no one will tell you what to do in the bedroom, but both parties need to feel pure, need to feel respected, need to feel loved in that act. So if somebody is pushing to do extra things, extreme things, I think that that's a problem with the person who's pushing. Look at your heart, and find out whether there is any impurity in there. And then the last question, I think, is what if I'm always the one who tries to solve problems? My husband can spend months without talking about anything. This is a very good question you ask Kiro in your long marriage counseling sessions. Because communication is key, and one partner often will be more aware and has to put in sometimes more effort than the other partner because they're not aware. But this is a big problem that needs communication and needs marriage counseling. I think that was all the questions. I think that's it really. Kira's going to add a few things.
Sorry, I'll just add a couple of things to things that Abuna said for these questions. Just 2 points. One thing I think very, very important, إن احنا نفهم and understand the other person and how they're built. Men and women, very differently built. ربنا خلقنا مختلفين. We're very different. And in general, sexual desire for men is usually a lot higher. Usually. معظم الوقت الراجل, the sexual desire, very high. And usually, the emotional desire and emotional intimacy is very high. فاحنا لازم نفهم النقطة دي ونعرف this point on the person we've married. فالرجالة إذا احنا شغالين طول اليوم رجعنا والعيال ننظف العيال يناموا and then في الآخر at the end of the night nearly bedtime and there's been no connection, no conversation, no حبيبتي عاملة إيه ازيك, how you going, talking, dinner, any emotional connection, and then نيجي في الآخر and we want to have relations with our wife. A lot of the time it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. And equally, the male's sex drive is usually high. There's a need there for our husbands, the husbands, to have this need. فاحنا ساعات we may not get everything perfectly. The emotional connection is good and we're very happy and very, very connected. Sometimes that's not the case. That doesn't mean and we shouldn't provide our husbands with things they need. And this is like Abuna said, we need to give to the other person. We have a command as husbands, like Christ did for the church. What does that mean? And a lot of the time it's funny, for weddings, in the wedding it says, wives submit to your husbands. And there's a lot of discussion about this teaching and the wives, they have to submit to their husband. And not as much discussion for the command given to the husband. The husband for us is more than submission. They're told to submit to us. We're told to lay down our life for them. Like Christ did for the church. What did Christ do for the church? He died for the church. We're called, the command for us, aktar than the female. We're called to lay down our lives for our wives. Not just submit, to lay down our lives. For being selfless, providing to the other person what they need is very, very important, both ways. The second point to one of the questions, and as a marriage counselor, I can tell you, from my experience, one of the biggest problems we have in our marriages is both parties, we don't put effort. How do you say effort in Arabic? مجهود. ما بنحطش مجهود in our marriages like everything else we do in our lives. احنا في الشغل بنصحى الصبح ونجهز and we go to work and we're on time, we do a good job, our boss is happy, we get promotions, we make more money, business, very good, we increase business, we do well financially, beautiful. مع العيال, we'll raise our kids, ناخدهم الكنيسة, نعلمهم, نربيهم. We put in a lot of مجهود, a lot of effort in our children. في البيت بنبني بيوت حلوة and ننظف and we'll get a cleaner and we'll mow the lawn and we'll cut the grass. We do everything to keep our house nice. خدمة بنخدم, نلبس شماس أو نطبخ في المطبخ أو نزور whoever, hospital visits. واجب نروح نزور ماما وبابا and we have to, عيب ما نشوفهمش, عيب, we have to go visit, we have to have family dinner, we have to do واجب, حد عيان في المستشفى لازم نروح نزورهم. We do, نحط مجهود and effort in every aspect of our lives. And if there's anything left over for our marriages, يمكن, maybe, we put in some مجهود, بعد كل ده, everything we do, if there's anything left, we give it to our marriages. And this is a big problem. If we look at ourselves or if we ask ourselves, هو احنا بنحط المجهود in our relationships the same as we do in every other area of our life? And a lot of the time we don't. We don't. And this is a big problem. But when we talk about why we're not connected, why we're not sexually connected, why we're not emotionally connected, why our marriages are having some of these problems, because we don't put in enough effort. We don't prioritize our relationships like we do in other areas. And when we start to do that, our relationships will get better. They'll benefit. They'll be happier. There'll be better communication. There'll be better, يعني نحن نتعامل مع بعض better لما نتخانق, when we argue, when we disagree, everything will be better if we put this effort into having a better relationship. Sexually, emotionally, communication, financial, everything, if we put in that effort. Thank you. Sorry, it took a long time. Thank you.